What up? I gotta go actually blow my nose. Give me a second. How much do we think we'll be able to get through with no interruptions from socks? Hmm? We'll find out. I put my headphones on because I want to listen to the music that I do or don't know is playing right now. You can like kind of see his tail wagging a little bit. 50% can hear. Oh, oh. You talking about interruption from whole socks? Yeah, you're right. He's got this long rope right now, and he's gonna end up smacking me with it. We're trying out 8 o'clock solely for people that may or may not be having like dinner or getting the kids down to bed, whatever it may be. 50% interruptions. Well, he's already interrupting, clearly. So we've done lost that battle. He's a good boy. Give it a couple minutes and then we'll jump in. I got this long page here. We're gonna go into some deep dive on what is strength, why do we need strength, what do we use strength for, all those different types of things. If you hear some banging in the background, it's a 3 foot long rope. Christ. I don't want to get super nerdy. We'll like get 50% nerdy. But I created this document. I'll put this document up on the community in the like the educational video tab. Just kind of going over like what is strength, why do we need it, what's the science behind it, the musculoskeletal system with it, the neural adaptations that you get, CNS system, kind of how to increase it, how to manipulate it, how to train for it, what's it good for, like why do we need strength. I think that personally strength is like the fundamental like building block of everything. If you're not strong, then what are we even doing? You know what I mean? This is kind of a vibe. Hey. What was that for? I lost technical difficulties. Hold up. Lost something important here. So I can't really see what anybody is saying. LOL. I lost. That's me on twice. Where the heck? Are we still here? I think we're still here. W. Alright. I don't know what I just did. I just like closed out of everything. That took so much out of my brain power. Jesus Christ. All right. Strength. Uno y zero y uno. Strength is... I don't know. I kind of like the music in my ears. We'll turn it down a little bit though. Strength, when you're looking at the musculoskeletal system, is essentially a reference that you use for your body to produce X amount of force. So you have this load that's in the world or in the universe, and you need to move it or shift it or whatever. Your body needs to produce a specific amount of force to be able to move whatever it is that you're trying to move. When you think about strength, you have like submaximal strength and you have absolute strength, which we'll go into a little bit. But essentially, it's the contractile force of the muscle to produce a specific amount of force to overcome a resistance that you're trying to overcome, for lack of better terms. For the most part, comes from muscle fiber. There's a lot of things that come into play whenever you talk about strength. Muscle fibers, cross-sectional area, neuromuscular efficiency, rate coding, the different types of muscle fibers, so type 2, type 1, type 2X, as well as like ligament thickness, tendon thickness, bone density, bone strength, both musculature like integrity as well as skeletal integrity and ligamentous integrity. Whenever you think about strength gains, the main thing that we're trying to do is increase the amount of maximal force that we can produce in our system, in the ecosystem. and you can pretty much do that multiple ways. The first way that you can pretty much generate strength is just by having a bigger muscle. So that's where like the cross-sectional area of the muscle comes from. So pretty much if you take a muscle belly like your bicep and you cut your bicep in half and you pull it out and you look at it like it's a chunk, that section is called a cross-sectional area. That's a cross-sectional area of the muscle. So if we increase the diameter of that cross-sectional area, then your body will have more force that it can generate because you now have a bigger muscle. So that's one way. Efficiency of the muscle. So neuromuscular efficiency, and we'll kind of go over a little bit of all these different things. Neuromuscular efficiency is going to break down into motor units. So the motor unit that you have in the muscle, along with rate coding, as well as your intramuscular connection. So essentially your brain speaking through the spinal cord to the muscle via nervous junction. And then you have ligaments and tendons, which will be the muscle spindle and the GTO. Your muscle spindle and GTO are two things that work in relationship to each other for one, decreasing the risk of injury, as well as two, increasing the amount of velocity that you can produce, which will increase the amount of strength that you have. So if we can increase essentially the muscle size as well as the speed of which we move a load, then that is one way that you can increase strength gains, essentially. Strength it's very scientifically based, so to speak. There's a lot of things that come into play, along with, joint stabilization, joint mobility, being able to go through a full range of motion with a specific movement that you're trying to do. So if you can't move correctly, then you can't build or increase the strength at which you're trying to increase in whatever lift it is that you're trying to do, whether it's a squatting pattern, a hinging pattern, horizontal or vertical push and pull pattern, or any core movement. All of that is going to joint stability and being able to do the range of motion and the what's the word that I'm looking for? Somebody help me out. Why did I just draw a blank? Holy crap. You know what I'm trying to say. Why did I just draw a blank? The way at which you do the exercise. Christ almighty. I'm not moving until I end up figuring out what this word is that I'm trying to say. Is Beth here? Is Dustin here? Y'all know what I'm trying to say. You guys are making me look like a moron. Christ, dude, what is the word that I'm trying to think of? It's not repetition. Why do I keep trying to say repetition? I'm gonna have to Google it. Form. That's what I was trying to say. I didn't even have to Google it. Form. If you don't do things with the proper form and end up moving correctly, then you'll end up pissing on yourself. Form. I ended up figuring it out. Yeah. It's okay. We all have brain fog at times. So, the musculoskeletal section is going to be, whenever it comes to strength, is cross-sectional area. If I'm looking over here because the chat is over here, I just want to make sure that no one says anything. Cross-sectional area, neuromuscular efficiency, the rate at which you produce the force, so velocity, and then the different types of muscle fibers that you have. So each different movement or exercise that you do is going to recruit different types of muscle fibers, which is going to play a role in which how much strength you can produce. Going into the kind of neuro side of it on strength gains is it's more so influenced whenever you think about the neuromuscular part about it. It's more influenced at like how efficient your nervous system is whenever it's under a specific axial load or any type of load in and of itself. So pretty much, well, let me show you something. I ended up putting a little like diagram in here. The first portion that I want to like kind of talk about whenever it comes to like the neuro side of it is motor units. Not a lot of people know kind of what a motor unit is. I'll show you this picture and then I'll kind of draw it. So this is a muscle belly, like in and of itself. So I wish I had a pointer. Can you see mine? Yeah, okay, you can see it. So like this is the entire muscle in and of itself, and this is going to be the bicep split in half, right? So this is your cross-sectional area. Whenever you break it down, you pretty much have a full muscle fiber right here. This big portion is a muscle fiber. You break the muscle fiber down into fascicles, and then from fascicles you end up getting each individualized fiber. And then the fiber is going to break into both your myosin and actin heads, which is what binds to each other to cause a muscle contraction, right? Whenever you look at an individual and they're like really lean and you see the striations in the muscle, you're pretty much seeing the entire spindle in and of itself right here. This portion, you're seeing like all the little each individual fascicles. Whenever we think about a motor unit, dry erase board. Oh, I just scared socks. Whoops. Whenever we think about a motor unit, and this is going to get kind of nerdy, essentially, like if we take the bicep and we split it in half, this is our cross-sectional area, and then we'll have each individual spindle, and then inside of each individual spindle is going to be all the fibers. You get the point. Boom, 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 boom. Whenever you think about the nervous system, through the nerves, you're going to end up getting like a little, kind of looks like, excuse my drawing, but it kind of looks like this. And then it's going to branch out, and it's going to innervate a specific different, we'll just kind of do like this, group of fibers. So one entity in and of itself, that, what was I trying to do here? This whole portion is one motor unit. So this is a motor unit, this is going to be a motor unit, this is a motor unit, and there's tons of them. You have tons of them in your muscle, like literally tons. And essentially, whenever you talk about motor unit, whenever you're a new beginner or you're detrained and you're just getting into lifting or you haven't lifted in a while, essentially what happens is your body is not efficient at recruiting every motor unit that you have in the muscle in and of itself. So whenever you start training, you hear the term like newbie gains, where people will get like super strong really quickly. It's not that they're, without sounding like a jerk, it's not that they're necessarily getting stronger. They're just getting more efficient at recruiting all of the motor units that they have inside of the muscle belly itself. There's no way that you can increase the amount of motor units. You have a specific amount of motor units. And there's also no way that you can increase the amount of muscle fibers that you have in a muscle. That is also a finite, specific amount. What you can do is increase the size of each fiber, along with increasing how many motor units you recruit. Whenever you can increase the amount of motor units that you recruit, then at that point you can proceed to make quick strength gains because you become more efficient. That's why you see a lot, like I said, you see a lot of people just starting out where they end up making a bunch of strength gains really quickly. Or if you go into like per se a rehab setting, a lot of people end up getting stronger really quickly. The reason behind that is because it's not necessarily fully because they're specifically getting stronger. It's just they're getting their body more efficient at recruiting all that's inside of the muscle, if that makes sense. Bro, this guy's going crazy. So motor units, number one. What is that? I don't know what that is. Once we proceed to maximize the amount of motor units, then the next thing that you're going to end up thinking about is something called rate coding. So rate coding essentially is the speed at which your brain will tell the motor units to fire. So you have, it goes through from the brain down through the CNS, so the central nervous system, through the body to the muscle, and then from the muscle you have an action potential that produces, which causes a bunch of cascades of different release of hormones, calcium, and all that kind of stuff, that then causes the myosin and actin heads via T-tubules to end up igniting and sliding, causing a muscle contraction. So the rate at which your brain can tell the motor units to fire and produce the action potential is something called rate coding. So the quicker that we can produce a faster rate coding, the more action potentials that you produce through the muscle body, which causes a more forceful and strong contraction. The last thing that I had on like the nervous system is kind of like a mix between both the nervous system as well as like the musculature system, which is something called a stretch shortening cycle. The stretch shortening cycle is going to be a relationship between something called a GTO and a muscle spindle. And essentially, we'll go back to the dry erase board. Get rid of my beautiful drawing here. Do we have any questions yet? No? I'm just kind of rambling. I can ramble about this stuff all day. let's see if I can make a better drawing. All right, so we have a muscle body. Boom, 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 boom. And we'll say this is the point of origin. So this is where it starts, and then it goes through. You have the muscle body, and then this portion right here, we'll say this is the tendon, right? So it turns into a tendon. So this is the tendon. So your GTO is going to be located in this section here. And what a GTO stands for, well, okay, what is a GTO? So a GTO is a Golgi tendon organ. Golgi tendon organ. So this is the GTO in the tendon is something that each muscle has and each tendon has that sends a signal to your brain whenever the muscle stretches to a point to where it's so elongated that the tendon might snap. Whenever your GTO senses that signal, that forceful signal of the muscles like pulling away from the tendon, your GTO fires up to your brain, telling the brain, hey, I'm about to break. And essentially what happens is the brain then sends a signal back to something called a muscle spindle. So we're elongating, so we're stretching. I don't know how to, we'll say elongating. E-L-O-N, elongating. That's good enough. You get the point. So this muscle is stretching, and then it sends a signal from the GTO to the brain. And then the brain then sends a signal to something called a muscle spindle. And a muscle spindle is going to be a nerve that innervates muscle spindles. So this is separate from our motor unit. The motor unit innervates an entire system of spindles. Your muscle spindle nerve innervates a spindle in and of itself. And essentially what happens when the brain tells the muscle spindle to kick on, that muscle will then contract. So we essentially have a muscle that's stretching. The GTO says, holy shit, I'm about to break, and tells the brain you need to activate the muscle spindle. The muscle spindle then tells the muscle, you're getting too long, you need to fire, and it contracts. And it ends up relaxing the tendon. So you see, that's why a lot of people, whenever they end up rupturing their Achilles or they pop like a pec muscle or something like that, they're elongating and stretching super, super quick. Or they're just elongating it past the point to where the tendon itself can withstand, and it breaks. So the GTO and the muscle spindle work in conjunction to create something called a stretch shortening cycle. So stretch shortening cycle. So essentially, whenever it comes to strength gains, if we can increase the load at which this system can produce, then at that point we can generate more force through the entire system to create more strength gains. So if our tendon can withstand more load and can stretch under a more forceful action, then at that point you can load the tissue a little bit more and produce more strength gains. Stretch shortening cycle. That's a good one. Does that make sense? It makes sense. So how would you think and or like how would we think or like translate the science of like strength gains, so increasing, you know, motor unit recruitment, rate coding, GTO and muscle spindles, along with cross-sectional area and all that kind of stuff? How would that translate over to kind of our training? Like how would we train to increase those numbers? The kind of gold standard is a percent 1 rep max, essentially. So you just train with light volume, so low volume, so like super low repetitions, 3, 4, 5, 6 repetitions at a near max or sub maximal 1 rep max. So we're going to go 80, 85, 90, 95, 97.5% 1 rep max for a low repetition range. You mainly want to do that with compound lifts, so things like squatting, deadlifting, bench pressing, overhead pressing, anything that requires is a multi-jointed movement. Anything that's an isolated movement, you're really not going to want to train for strength, just because the muscle that you're training with isolated movements is so isolated that you can possibly do more damage than good. So whenever you think about like a bicep curl you're not really going to want to do for a percent of a 1 rep max. I'm not going to get a 1 rep max on a bicep curl, but I am going to try to get a 1 rep max on like a squatting or a deadlifting, a hinge, so like a barbell thruster, or overhead press, like a military press or a pin press or something like that. Those are going to be kind of the main compound lifts that we're going to want to utilize a percent 1 rep max. You're going to want to, like I said, go in that range of 80, 85, 90, 95 plus for kind of a lower repetition. You know, we don't want to dance any higher than 6 reps. If you look at like the Strength Symphony program that I created, you'll see that your A lifts, so your compound lifts, are going to be in that like 1 to 5 rep range for a specific percent 1 rep max, and then you slowly progress that and periodize it over the weeks. That way we can, you know, cause more adaptation over time. So we might start with like week 1 of 80, 85, 90, and then week 2 we're going to do 85, 90, 95, and then week 3 we're going to do, you know, 90, 95, 97.5%. Those are percent 1 rep maxes, right? So some type of periodization that will cause some type of overload on the system. Another way that we can produce strength gains or aid in strength gains is going to be kind of a two double-edged sword. So speed and power training. So whenever you think about speed and power, that's going to be kind of a lighter rep range. Like we're thinking about like moving something super quick whenever we're thinking about speed. How does that correlate over to strength, submaximal, near maximal strength gains? Well, we got to think about the stretch shortening cycle, right? So producing rapid stretching and contracting of our muscle and tendons will cause an adaptation in that system to be able to withstand heavier loads. So if you're doing things like speed training, plyometric training, ballistics training, jumping, sprinting, maybe like Olympic lifting, something that's going to be, 20% to 50, 60% of a 1 rep max. It's going to be a lot lighter of a load. Now you're going to be able to produce more strength with. Everything, whenever it comes to strength, speed, power, is all going to be on a curvier linear line. Back to the dry erase board. We'll get nerdy with this too, because this translates into just kind of like functional stuff. So this is going to be called a force velocity grid. And so we'll go force velocity grid. And we have force here. Whoops. Can we all see that? Yeah, we can see that. Force and then speed. And essentially the way that it looks is kind of like this. So the greater the force, the slower that's going to move. So this is maximal force. And this is going to be your 1 rep maxes. This is going to be like your power lifters that are competing in like powerlifting meets where they only have to lift for 1 single repetition. Then whenever we get down here, we have low force. Let's see. We have low force but super fast speed. So this is going to be like sprinting, running, any type of dynamic, plyos, anything that's super fast movement. And then in the middle is going to be power. And then we have over here, if you want to get technical, we have speed strength. And then right here, we have strength speed. So like powerlifting, like power movements, whenever you think about power, it's essentially like power equals, we won't get too deep into this, maybe another day because we're talking about strength, but power is force over a specific movement of time or speed. So the way, essentially, well, there's a glare. Essentially, there went my globe. Yeah. Essentially, the way that you can think about this is everything is in correlation to each other because it's all on this curve, right? So if we increase our, do I have another marker? I do. Oh, I do. Hey, yo. If we increase speed, let's say it moves to here. This is about to get really colorful. And we increase power. Then on this curvature line, you're going to increase your strength. We want to try to move this curve to the right as much as possible. Same thing is going to go with strength. If we increase strength, then we're going to increase power and we're going to increase speed. So everything kind of plays one into itself. If you get stronger, you'll get faster. If you get faster, you'll get stronger. If you get more powerful, you'll get more strong. If you get more powerful, you'll get quicker. So, speed, how do we train for strength? Speed, power, plyo, ballistics training, that's going to work. GTO, muscle spindles, stretch running cycle, all that type of stuff to make us more efficient whenever we try to load under a heavy load. Super simple. We'll go back to the drawing board as well here in a second. Whenever you are thinking about a muscle contraction, there's 3 different types of muscle contractions. You have eccentric, you have isometric, and you have concentric muscle contractions. How do you train for strength? Is by decreasing the amount of time that it takes for those 3 muscle contractions to occur. And you can train them each individually. It's something called triphasic training. So you can decrease the amount of time that your eccentric contraction is. You can decrease the amount of time that your isometric contraction is. And you can decrease the amount of time that your concentric contraction is. So essentially, we think of it as like eccentric is going to be lowering, or the elongation of the muscle. Isometric is going to be the static hold between. Concentric is typically going to be the shortening of the muscle, and or the like lifting. So whenever we think about a bench press, this pause. I don't know what he's eating. Uno momento, por favor. We were doing so good. And then he found out what an eraser was. This is the first thing that he's eaten that hasn't been his toys. That's crazy. That is crazy. Okay, wait, I'll be right back again. Okay, we're good now. We're okay. We're all right. That was insane. What was I talking about before I got rudely interrupted? Muscle contractions. Eccentric overload, AELs, so eccentric overloading. So eccentrics, isometrics, and concentric contractions. Essentially, eccentric contractions is going to pretty much enhance and maximize the amount of motor units that you need to recruit. Because if we increase the amount of time under tension during our eccentric loading, so it's a very slow lowering of the weight, the muscle spindles and the motor units that are being recruited is going to end up fatiguing kind of fast. So your body has to produce more motor units. It has to recruit more motor units to be able to lift the weight, essentially. So eccentric loading, isometric loading is going to pretty much, whenever we think about lowering the weight, the isometric is going to be the time between lowering and raising. So it's going to be a transitional period of us accepting the force into generating the force. And that's what I was trying. I can't use my fucking eraser anymore. It's all like wet and stuff now. That's okay. So if we look at it in the sense of like a V chart, so this would be normal, and we're gonna go eccentric, and then there's gonna be an isometric phase, and then there's gonna be a concentric, and then we're gonna go back to starting. Essentially, with eccentric training, isometric training, our rate at which we accept the force is going to be a lot quicker. And then our isometric contraction is going to be able to convert it a lot faster. So that's going to make us a lot more strong. So by training eccentric specific and isometric specific, we're teaching our body how to accept the force and then generate it into force that we then can produce. The smaller this V is, the more strong of a person that you'll be and a more powerful person that you'll be. So training for eccentric and isometrics will increase strength gains as well as increase power and velocity and all that kind of stuff. There's a bunch of other kind of things on here. So like eccentric training, it's going to be very tempo based, so kind of like time under tension. So you'll end up seeing like on a lot of the programs, there'll be like a tempo or a speed, and it'll tell you kind of 3-0-0 or 3-1-1 or 1-3-1 or whatever. It's going to be eccentric, isometric, and concentric contractions in that order. So it'll kind of tell you on the programs as far as like whether you're training eccentrically, isometrically, or concentrically. I was rambling and then I got super distracted with socks, which is kind of crazy. But I think that's kind of all that I had on here. Whenever we think about strength gains in any aspect, whether it's training or if it's some form of like joint strengthening, overall strength, and different like movement patterns, it's kind of all the same, right? So we're going to want to think about increasing motor unit recruitment. We're going to want to think about increasing rate coding, and we're going to want to think about increasing the muscle size, which plays into hypertrophy, which we can talk about that on another day. And then we want to think about kind of like the GTO, muscle spindle stretch shortening cycle, tendon thickness, and if we can increase all of those different metrics, then you'll end up being a stronger individual overall. And it's a pretty good foundation. Like having a strong foundation will definitely be able to correlate over kind of increasing muscle size, increasing power output, increasing speed. Like I said, the force velocity curve, like the force velocity grid, kind of shows everything is in correlation to each other. So I'm pretty sure that's really kind of all that I had. I didn't get super deep into everything. I just kind of it's 101. It's strength 101. Any questions so far? Yes, no, maybe so. Strength training is really simple. It's not hard if you know kind of what the adaptations are that you're trying to achieve. The fundamental thought process that I think of whenever I think of strength training is pretty much, let's lift heavy stuff and let's move things really quickly. Whenever you think about let's lift heavy stuff, we're going to want to say let's lift heavy stuff slowly. There she is. There she is. Beth, do you have any questions about strength gains? What did you miss? We went over everything, pretty much. So you practically missed it all. I know that you're trying to kind of increase your strength. Do you have any, I'm getting kind of warm. Do you have any specific like questions about strength? Oh, what you also missed the fact that like the first thing that Socks ever ate or destroyed was my dry erase marker, because we went on the board for a little bit. Have you seen anything about cardio hurting strength gains? Is there any factual evidence to this? It depends. It depends. Whenever you think about cardio in the sense of I'm just trying to keep my cardiovascular system kind of up to date and working, and or I'm just trying to burn a few extra calories, there's no real hard evidence that proves otherwise. The flip side to that coin is if you're like a long distance runner, or if you are a long distance swimmer, or anything that's like super long distance, so triathlete or a marathon runner, something like that, where you're running or doing cardio for 30, 40, 50 plus minutes at a super high intensity, then at that point, yes, there is a little bit of decrease in strength gains, because essentially what's happening is you have specific muscle fibers that are for aerobic capacity, and you have specific muscle fibers that are for anaerobic capacity. So whenever you do strength gains, you're tapping into specific muscle fibers, type 2, type 2X, and some type 1s. Whenever you're on the other end of the spectrum and you're trying to do like long distance running, then you're going to tap into the kind of aerobic muscle fibers, so 1, 2s, a little bit of 2s, things that muscle fibers that produce force over a long period of time, instead of muscle fibers that produce a lot of force in a short period of time. So whenever you think about cardio, in the sense of, is it hurting your strength gains? It depends on the cardio. If you're doing maybe like sprints here, sprints there, no, it's actually going to help your strength gains. If you're doing like a run, maybe a mile or two, like 2 days a week or something like that, same thing, that's not really going to hurt your strength gains. It actually will kind of benefit your strength gains because and this is something that we went over that anyways, doing cardio like that will increase your muscle spindles and your GTO and your stretch shortening cycle, which will aid in strength gains. Essentially, a little 15-minute run a couple times a week separate from the workouts won't hurt me. No, that won't hurt you at all. That will not hurt you whatsoever. You might hate yourself after you do it, though. Any type of running, you're going to hate yourself after you do it. Like, that part will hurt. But as far as hurting your strength gains, none at all, none whatsoever. That's not going to affect or manipulate you at all. The only thing is that if you the only time that I would say that it would affect you is, let's say that, what day say, Thursday? Let's say tomorrow you went for a 15-minute run, and then Saturday was your squat day, and Saturday your legs are a little bit sore from the run, then that will hurt you. Yes, because you're not fully recovered. But if you're not experiencing anything like that and you feel like fresh on your lower days, like whenever you're doing squatting or trap bar deadlifting or something like that, then no, the 10, 15, 20 minute little jog or run is not going to hurt you at all. Yeah, running sucks. I hate it. I would much rather do sprints, though. That's just me personally. I would much rather do rounds of sprints than 15 minutes of running. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about the running at all. Now if something happens where if you're a psycho and your 15-minute run turns into like a 30-40 minute run, then at that point that's the volume at which you're running is kind of getting to a point to where you might have some diminishing returns on your strength gains, but it's very minimal. Yeah, you know me though, steady jogger on a treadmill. I don't have the attention span for that. We all know that. My ADHD won't allow me to do that. I would much rather just like sprint, feel like I'm about to pass out, sprint again, feel like I'm about to pass out, and then sprint again, and then actually pass out. Because at that point, it's just like 30-second increments of sprints. But I have this, if you want, if you have time, I'm putting this, I have like a little PDF. I'll just like kind of show it to you real quick. Actually, I put a lot of effort into it. I'm pretty proud of myself. Oh, that's the same full screen. Here we go. I did this little PDF that has all these little metrics and stuff to it, 8 pages long, about kind of the majority of the stuff that we talked about on, as far as neuromuscular, skeletal musculature system, and how we can manipulate what's the science behind it, how can we manipulate it in training with our loading schemes, all that kind of good stuff. What else you got though? Yeah, you'll have to check it out. Either that or I'll just call you. Everything that's the program that you're running, the Strength Symphony program, everything that's in this, like Strength Symphony is kind of programmed based off of all these metrics, right? So it's essentially to cap up and sum up everything that we kind of discussed. You have two different ways that you can increase strength. You can increase strength via the musculoskeletal system, and you can increase strength via the nervous system. Those are two ways that you can increase strength. Whenever you think about the musculature system, the musculoskeletal system, we want to increase the cross-sectional area. We want to increase the size, so like I said, the cross-sectional area or the size of the muscle belly. We want to increase the force production, and we want to utilize the correct muscle fibers. And then the neuro side of it is going to be an increase in motor unit recruitment and increase rate coding, and then increase in stretch shortening cycle with our GTO and muscle spindles. How do you do that? You lift heavy shit for low repetitions. So getting jacked, yes. Well, that's another thing that we talked about is like, in order for you to get jacked, you have to get strong, but in order for you to get strong, you have to get a little jacked. They all kind of correlate one with another, right? So if you get jacked based off of hypertrophy training, then you're going to get a little stronger. Vice versa, if you get a little stronger, then you're going to get a little bit more jacked. We're essentially just trying to be aesthetic, strong individuals. This discussion was a little thrown because Socks ended up eating a dry erase eraser. So I got a little distracted. But I'm trying to play with like times and stuff as far as like the discussions. We'll most likely end up doing hypertrophy next. We talked about strength a little bit, kind of an elementary course 101, nothing super in depth. We can go as deep as like hormonal responses, what's released, how it's released, how does the brain talk via nervous system to the nerves innervating into the motor units, how does rate coding actually occur whenever you talk about the brain moving through the gray matter of the spinal cord, blah blah blah. But we kept it super elementary. We'll do the same thing for hypertrophy the next time, and then we'll do the same thing for power and speed on the next one. Unless you want to talk about something else. Totes up to you. I'm just here. Oh, big yawn. I'm just here to spread some knowledge, to which you have front row seat to. So, this video is going to go inside of the educational video tab in the classroom on the school. So if you want to watch it back, you can. Otherwise, I think that's where we'll come to an end. Do we have any questions, comments, or concerns? This is only live discussion number like 3 or 4. So we're still... Maybe I'll start doing slideshows. What if I did like a PowerPoint, like you're actually in class? That would be kind of cool. Maybe we'll try that next time. Maybe, yeah. Oh Lord. Maybe we'll try that next time. Maybe we'll try. Like I was going to just put like this up and just kind of go through this, but look at that, Beth. Look, LOL, we got some pictures here. Maybe not. Sounds like school. Well, I mean, we're trying to learn here. What do you mean? I was just going to put this up and then just kind of flow with this because it's in the 8-page document. But I just kind of winged it because I also drew some stuff on a dry erase board. But maybe we'll come to a consensus. We'll come to a consensus like during the weeks to come, and we'll see. All right. That's where we come to an end. Questions, comments, concerns, feel free to put them inside of the community and we'll answer from there. Other than that, nothing but love. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll go through hypertrophy a little bit next, maybe. Unless someone has something else that they want to talk about, we can talk about that. But besides that, 2 weeks from today.